So thanks so much for sitting to chat with me.
Sure, my pleasure.
So maybe first to just frame the conversation now that we're in the middle of this COVID pandemic, would be curious to hear what kind of lessons or learnings you've seen or been feeling from this pandemic and this time of the coronavirus.
Lessons.
Yeah, either for yourself personally or what you've seen kind of as a global or a collective. What are some of the lessons or growth opportunities or perhaps even some of the benefits or hidden blessings that have been coming up?
I think it's been the greatest blessing humanity's had in eons. So, COVID has provided an opportunity for people to. The root of discord is our relationships, emotionally, mentally, energetically, spiritually, with ourselves and our environment. And that gets manifested in the creations that surround us. So, in my experience, COVID is a lot of what's embedded in our structures and our DNA and our belief systems goes back to things that were so traumatic, so cataclysmic that we forgot, but it's still in our bodies. So COVID has created an opportunity for us to work through homeopathic versions of these things and still feel, but not feel the terror of completely getting wiped out, like the plague. So the plague is still a big part of our physiology in terms of our genetic DNA. It wiped out a tremendous amount of the population, and this is where bless you came from. It's all over the world. This is something that affected everything, and so.
Sorry, the plague. You mean which? This plague?
Not this plague. No, the great.
The plague. Okay.
The plague of the Dark Ages, when I think it was a third of the population died. Don't quote me on that, but there was so much fear because people couldn't see it coming, and every time they would cough or sneeze, it was like, bless you, God bless you, like, I hope you're okay, I hope you make it, and now stay away from me. So there was rampant fear, and they didn't have anything to stop it at the time. So that kind of mass hysteria then gets embedded to the point where now, even hundreds and hundreds of years later, we're still saying bless you. So these are things in culture that we know or don't know it, and we can say, oh well, it doesn't mean that anymore, but there's still often a piece. And what COVID has provided, COVID's the list of positives versus negatives is tremendous. I'm not saying I'm like, oh, I'm so glad this happened, but in my work it's about seeing what's the master plan, what's the root, what's really going on, without judgment. And when we look at COVID, we can see it's a homeopathic, like everybody, the whole world stopped. So we could listen. And it wasn't prejudice. And whatever conspiracy theory is, like, they're amazing rabbit holes and they're fun. And I'm not saying they're not legitimate. Like, it is. It's like there's so much energy that can go into that and looking at it. And I've definitely gone down rabbit holes many, many times and looking for truth. But what I'm finding is the deepest truth is love. And not to go over anything. It's just to say, well, what's really going on? And just seeing how COVID's operating, it's caused, where our discord comes from is from our parents and our siblings and our partners. These are the things that we are magnetically drawn to most, that will mirror to us our discord.
Those closest relationships, the most intimate,
Yes, and sometimes they're in flow and sometimes they're in imbalance, but what this has done is it's caused all of us to go back into our boxes and to sit with that and work it out, and to be with it for months and just feel it, because it's about feeling it, it's about allowing it. We're designed to feel more than anything else as a species, and yet we numb it because the feeling connects to stories. When we go that vulnerable, that deep, that kind of rage or grief or ecstasy, it's like, oh, it's not safe. There's so many times in history that hasn't been safe, and there's still an even deeper piece inside of our DNA that goes back even further, that has been separating us from the planet. And that's also part of this. This goes back to the wave. Like, we're working through that because we're looking over our shoulders saying, is mom going to kill us? And
the wave, mom being Mother Nature.
Yeah, the planet. Like, you're on this planet, on this bubble, And then if something like that happens, like
Yeah.
you're on the bubble, you're in the box. So there's a part of our DNA that's kind of like, oh, never knowing when. So what do? We create houses on top of a house. We control our water. We defecate into our water. It doesn't make any sense, except for sea creatures. We're kind of the only ones, and birds. So there's a logic to it in the sense of our primal survival instinct. So we're pissed, but at the same time as soon as that happened, the power that was, we suddenly made it into gods, and then we put ourselves below it instead of equal. Like, we're not above any of it, but we're not below either. We're equal. Like, we can't do what the sun does, and the sun can't do what we do, but together we can create.
So you mean we made what gods?
Elements, everything.
Elements.
And then we controlled what we could, animals, nature, and we're pummeling oil, we're pounding into the ground, literally pulling out this almost like blood, pulling it out and then burning it into the sky. We're using the elements against itself, but really just hurting ourselves. So it's this extraordinary story that's happening. And it's the basis for most of what we're doing. It's a basis for our agriculture, it's a basis for our health programs, it's a basis for our separation and technology. It's a basis for why we create homes in the way we do. And it's not to say there's not inspiration on top of that, but this underlying quiet foundation that's existed for so long is still present. And so as that gets neutralized, as we start to come to terms with it, because now COVID has people inside.
Yeah.
It's bringing militaries home. And there's a focus in terms of separation, which is what we've been doing anyway from the planet, so we've been doing it now from each other. And what are people going to want to do now? Get out in nature. Like, they've been in boxes for so long, and we've created those boxes energetically and structurally within our culture and the way that we operate anyway. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with any of this. It's just saying, well, what are we doing in our life? And now we have an opportunity, after being overly exposed to each other, to the point where we're sitting with everything and getting to finally feel it, finally see it.
And it's almost that we need to feel to heal, right? And what you said the other day, if you can mention that, the masks, then can you talk about that, the analogy of the mask?
Sure, yeah, and I've heard several times, it's just I used to have an acting conservatory, and people would come to my school to discover their truth, because out there, they're not allowed to be who they are, and they often don't even know who they are. So they spend all this time playing this character, and they don't even know it. People call it the ego, whatever you want to call it. But still, when you have an authentic self connected to your authentic vibration of your ego's connected with your authentic self, it's like, it's all together. It's like an alignment. Yeah. And it's not better or worse, it's just a different experience.
Yeah.
So people inherently have been wearing masks to conform, to feel like they can survive and feel accepted, and all the things they're either fighting or wanting or needing. Again, nothing wrong with that. That's a journey. But once we see what we're doing that, then the thing is that what you want? And if it's what you want, do it. Like, great. Have a great time, please. If it's not what you want, if you're curious, great. Then who are you?
Yeah.
So these masks, I think it's so interesting to see people now putting literally masks on their face, and they're saying, oh, I can't wait to take that off.
Yeah, yeah.
And really speak to one another and connect to one another and hug one another, hold one another. So we start to reintegrate and remember what it is to connect.
How powerful. Very powerful. I hadn't heard that analogy visual before, so that really struck me.
I kind of want to wear like one of those full-on masks, just like...
See me, So, thanks for that. And moving on to kind of what's evolving out of this. Have you heard of the term New Earth? And if so, what does it mean to you? And if not, what resonates when you hear that term, New Earth?
Yeah, I've heard it a lot. New Earth is an interesting, I guess so, I work with channeling, and so a specific energy in particular that I work with. Just can ask whatever questions, and the New Earth, I guess, never really talked about it that way, but we're always in a state of constant creation. And they talk about this time in particular, like it's funny because there's so many things that are happening right now that I'll look at it and I'm like, oh, that's a problem. I used to think, oh, this is the problem. Like, and now when they talk about it, I'm like, oh no, that's a whole different story. Like, that's actually amazing.
You mean the energy you're channeling, which we'll get into later, yeah.
Yeah, so, and I'm referencing that just to give credit. I mean, this isn't,
you
know, this is how I'm just perceiving it. But they talk about the population. I've always thought that the issue with population wasn't population, it was the lack of, I would say love, lack of presence. Because Emoto's experiments, he would take, Dr. Emoto, he'd have dirty water and have monks meditate over the water, and some of it was one was the 5th dirtiest river in the world, and it became drinkable. It's like, wow. Just because they were just resonating with love.
Nice.
So imagine the entire population resonating with love. So we're the only thing that's in discord, and then we have our dogs to kind of show us what love is, and they also kind of work with
dogs,
that.
Yeah.
I mean, they are love, and what I've been shown is that they're there to remind us. That's why it's man's best friend, what love is, whenever we forget.
Like medicine animals.
Very much, yeah, the ultimate. And always forgiving, always there. And it's, right?
Yeah.
And I've even heard the speculation, like they're training to be humans. So they're like hanging out with humans, and then they incarnate after learning to love and observe and be around and then become a human. And I was like, wow, what a great school. Yeah. And good for us as they're starting to reincarnate. So we talk about the vibration. So, sorry, lost track for a second.
The term New Earth.
New Earth.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this new vibration, we're designed to create. And as we're working together, so all this population on the planet, we can change the planet. So you've seen how quickly the environment has shifted as a consequence of COVID. And it's more than anything, it's a reflection of our emotional state inside that then creates the world outside.
Yes.
As is inside is out.
Yes.
So as we're shifting energetically and emotionally, mentally, physically, these things, working through these things, our health is changing. And then, because COVID is mostly designed, it's focusing on the lungs. So lungs is around grief, and that's connected to the large intestine, which is about letting go of things that no longer serve us.
Okay.
So there's a direct correlation, and then speaking one's truth. So, and this is the heart's truth, especially that expression, that grief. And that's what happens a lot when people receive this, is this fear, this grief, this sadness, and then it's starting to come out of the communities that it's engaging with.
When you receive this, what do you mean?
When people are getting this diagnosis.
Okay, the virus.
The virus.
Okay.
And
they're experiencing grief, you're saying?
Well, a lot of people get scared. They go to and then they're seeing their family, and then some people are passing on. I mean, the numbers are low by comparison, but all those theories aside, like, let's just see what's happening.
Yeah.
I mean, let's forget the conspiracies for a second. Let's forget the facts for a second. Let's just see what's happening.
Yeah.
Behind
it all, yeah.
Totally. And it's, so what they were showing me was that the reason there's so many people on the planet is because it's such an extraordinary time to be here.
Yeah.
So everyone wanted to come back.
Oh, yeah.
So it's been leading up to this.
Yes.
And I was just like, wow, what a beautiful, I mean, it's not a fear-based story. It's not a tragic hero-based story. It's almost like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen story. It's more curiosity and intrigue. It's a different paradigm because we're so constructed to work from the hero's journey and fear, and those are beautiful too. There's nothing wrong with it. But it's just like, well, what else is going on? So everyone's here for this moment, and the idea of the new earth and my connection to and belief is that we've so many times through history, humanity has been wiped out as a consequence of some catastrophic, cleansing element, fire, water, what have you, the asteroids, the wave, tidal wave. All kinds of things have happened, polar shifts, and we don't even, a lot of this is speculation based on our research and what we discover, but were we there? Probably not. Past life regressions, whatever you want to talk about, but there's the things that we do know and that we have concreted is that elements essentially took us out. Not everybody, still here. And in doing so, now we have a new opportunity as a collective to, instead of wiping the slate clean, we can choose to create something new. And what's coming through now, the new earth is around because the Earth is fine. It's not going anywhere.
Right.
Earth is fine.
Right.
We can say, oh, the poor Earth, we just save the Earth. No, you don't. The Earth is fine. So when we focus on ourselves as humanity and see how we are the biggest piece in this, we really need Human Day. I mean,
Human Day. Yeah.
Because it's our own discord with ourselves.
We're
that's
the biggest threat to ourselves.
And disconnecting us from the planet, the shame, this guilt. It's like, and then of course, it's so hard to live with that. So what do? We end up projecting it or creating things to, and that's an extraordinary journey. Like there's nothing wrong with that either. It's created this separation. So we had this oneness before, and then we have this separation. We have all this technology. All these things we're creating are things that inherently are inside of us already. What we can do, but we forgot. Like we are the internet. You want to talk Akashic records or whatever term you want to use? It's energy. It's everywhere. It's accessible. So we are the internet, in a sense. But we have these incredible things to play with. These phones, these computers. It's extraordinary what we've created. So we've had all of this because we've done it alone, away from mom. So we can do it ourselves. So instead of doing pyramid technology or a lot of the stuff that was designed in the early part of the 1900s. With Tesla and all kinds of rife, like all these things, they were so dramatic, but they were so, it was too much too quick.
Right.
Like
it would have shaken things up too much if Tesla's free energy would have, right?
How many things do you construct overnight when that happens? And it's not that we don't want that, it's great that we have that, but is the world going to be able to handle that? Because, for example, this goes back to when they had the Mars attacks radio show. They had I don't know if you remember, that there was a reading online around being attacked by Martians, and all these people were really scared. The calls and the police stations, like it was a bit of chaos.
Okay.
And this was a radio show that was telling a story. So if you actually have an alien ship land on the planet, everything changes. Like that people see and know, like there's aliens here. Everything's going to change like that. And the same thing goes for Tesla's free energy. You're talking about money structures, agriculture, energy. There's so many vibrational structures that are in place. And when those are basically eliminated, it's like detoxing. It's like, not only is it detoxing, it's shifting. It's like a polar shift on the planet because it's so dramatic. What COVID has done is it's caused what appears to be the fastest shift I can imagine in the most peaceful way to bring everybody in instead of out. Both physically and spiritually and emotionally. Like everybody's going in.
It's a beautiful way to frame it.
And now from there's all this inspiration because people are they're moving through these things and we're reconnecting to the planet. And now it's about, so we've created all of this work away from the planet because we didn't trust the planet. That's why we're pounding. That's why our power plants are throwing stuff into the rivers. We're crapping in our toilets. Really, we're just hurting ourselves. And it's kind of like, but when we look at that, and we're like, oh, this is why we've been doing what we do. The feminine and the masculine are playing like, you're the earth. We're humanity. And we're playing out these roles to feel again, to find ourselves home again, to reconnect again. And that's a longer and deeper story in itself, as we separated things again to be able to find ourselves, because you are the masculine and feminine. Like I am the masculine and feminine, we're one. The heart is both. It's the feeling and the creation, the movement of that energy, regardless of your frame.
We as individuals are the masculine and feminine, and also the larger, is that what you mean?
Yeah, it's a larger, and that's why the earth is shifting, is we're shifting so dramatically. Like look at all the incredible discord we've had coming up to this moment, the numbers and the mass, and then the pollution, the water. But we can look at all this from a new perspective, and once we start to see that, there's an embracement and a curiosity rather than a fear. But what COVID is doing, and this idea of a new earth, is it's doing it in a way where we're empowered and where we can see it without freaking out. And it's also happening with the administration. I mean, Donald Trump is extraordinary in the sense that if there's anything under a rock, it's coming up. It's
He's
just like
bringing everything out.
Everything to be seen. And I'm like, God love that man for going through, for like choosing
Even though you're an Obama guy.
Yeah, I'm an Obama guy, but
yeah.
But then I was like, okay, so this was a standard for me. This is my perception. Like, I was like, oh, here's like a gold standard for me for like, this is a president. And then we got to see, then we get everything out of the way, because now we know what we want. And Donald Trump gets to do that because we want that too. Because the dark, there's so much conflict about what the dark is. The dark and the light, the dark and the light. I'm like, anytime you fight something, you can't hear it. Like anytime you're judging something, you can't hear it. Judgment is, according to the Book of Mary, it's the only sin, you know? So when the judgment happens, we can't hear anything. And so if we're scared of the planet, we're not going to hear all this stuff going on. You know, we're not going to be able to hear the plants. We're not going to hear all these ideas. We're not going to hear the sun and these technologies. But now that we're so curious, and now that we're having time to see, and that's a big thing with Floyd, because there's so much tension that goes back to that was
Floyd. You mean the hurricane or the
other gentleman who was killed?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So
George Floyd. Yeah.
When George Floyd was killed, and of course one of the last things he said was he wanted his mother. And I mean, there's so much power in what happened. And it was like this microscopic version of history. You know, as many people know, like the reason that the police force was even created was to control slaves.
Yeah, I didn't know that, yeah.
In the United States, that was a big part of it. So that's why they had police. So that was recent. But this also goes back to tethers that are probably thousands of years old, embedded in our structures, our DNA, and we don't even remember. So we're not in those times anymore, but if you look at the breakdown of the United States in the South and the North, there's still a lot of the same structures and same percentages in terms of belief systems and health, and there's still this separation energetically in many different levels. It wasn't that long ago. So look what happens when George Floyd, when he was killed, the whole world got to express its rage, because that's a part of everybody.
And the I can't breathe aspect too, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is so beautiful. And I'm not advocating for what happened. Like, it broke my heart.
But
see the power, just like COVID. I'm not like, yeah, let's go COVID, but I'm seeing it with the band. It was just like, wow, what a powerful, like, those two just changed the world, because so many people have this rage that's been inside of them that they were not allowed to express. So what do? They broke through the boundaries, and even the economic structure with some of the rioting that come up in that structure when that's happening. But they go in the masses, they're taking some of the masks off, they're going against, they're saying, you know, no masks, speak their truth.
Bringing down of statues and this,
And it's not so much about the destruction of it, it's about the authenticity of a moment. It's allowing ourselves to be heard.
Yeah.
Because that's what gets buried is people's truth, their authentic expression.
And there's no coincidence that these things are all happening at the same time.
It's the most extraordinary, fastest movement. And a lot of the technologies and the things that are being shown, and so many others, you know, these things are causing people to shift quickly.
Yeah, let's move to that actually, because I'm really curious to hear more about, so you've shared a bit about what the vision and what's coming with New Earth. Well, how would you say is your role, or how are you supporting or helping to co-create this New Earth?
I don't know. I guess I could say, they could tell me. I feel like I haven't done much. I haven't really shared much or done much yet. For me, I feel like right now I've just been holding a vision, but I think just sharing what comes through me, and go ahead.
No, I'm just, you've shared, that you work as a channel, so maybe could you share a little bit about that, what that means, and who or what you're channeling, if that's something you can share.
Sure. I'm still working through the New Emperor's Clothes kind of syndrome, but
The New Emperor's Clothes.
I mean, part of me thinks, I don't know, like Paul Selig, he's a really well-known channel, like I admire him so much, but he has so many insecurities about, like, for years and years and years, even though his books were coming out of him, and he's still just, like, totally insecure about it. At least that's my understanding, and I'm just like, oh, I get that now.
Yeah.
Like, am I just, what... so all these things come up, but at the same time, like, I can't negate what's coming through when I'm like, I don't know this stuff. It's teaching me, it's showing me.
Right.
And I feel like it's really powerful. So it feels like, so when I have these conversations, these are lucid conversations where I can hear it. It's almost like, it's like Abraham Hicks. It's like instant, they take over my body, they speak through me, and it's clear. The vibration is very different. I learn a lot. And they speak around whatever question I'm asking. So I guess in respect to this work, it feels like, their name is Andromedus, and it's kind of a play. They're like, they're humor. Andromeda us, it's like, it's about us now. It's not about the individual. And it's about, and that's why it's Andromeda is the system. And some of their jokes just, they just, I'm like, okay, I get it.
They have a sense of humor.
They definitely have a sense of humor. They want to, I feel like I'm almost kind of embarrassed like expressing any of their jokes sometimes. No.
So you'd say it's kind of multiple that kind of come through. It's not just like a one energy. It can be different sources or entities, kind of.
I've experienced other entities working with me. Like sometimes a client's father will come inside of me and speak, or their mother. But this is like my Abraham.
Okay.
This is my Andromedus. It's a collective energy.
Gotcha.
And if we want to work in this plane, because they talk about it, the play of everything, but there's a lot of history, and I'd never heard of Andromedans. I didn't know. Apparently it's an alien race, and there's a whole celestial system that's next to the Milky Way that's colliding, and anyway, so it's fascinating, but it's fun. They're like, it's supposed to be fun. It's all supposed to be fun. And they even talk about how it gets presented. They're like, channels can come through in any way. Like you could sound like anyone, but like you get to choose how it's coming through to best serve you, or best serve your environment and all these things. I'm like, like you can be a drag queen, or you can have a different accent, or like it doesn't, like whatever or cultural like construct, or not stereotype, but what's the other word? Archetype, that wants to be played through. So it was just really interesting. But anyway, so the information has been coming through for like 4 years now, and I've just been writing it, not really sharing too much. I'm getting to a tipping point where I'm just like, all right, I'll just do it anyway. So in a lot, like everything I've expressed to you, I've been shown. Like it's just a part of me. I just know it, and it makes sense. Like I read once about somebody saying there was an A story and a B story to everything. And the A story is like what you'll read in all the major newspapers, and the B story is all like the cover-up stuff you'll read about. Like, and then they said, but they're both covering up the C story.
Oh, I don't get that. Say that again.
A story is one side of the fight, where it's like, here's you can say propaganda or just news of the, your typical major newspapers, TV stations. And then you have the other, which is the thing that says, here's what's really going on.
Okay.
So all the undercover news and the conspiracy stories and other things, I think they're very valid, a lot of these things. But then
the C is the real story.
C, they're both covering up because they both have tension, they both have fear, they both have fight.
Okay.
C is and for a year, it took me like a year and a half. I was like, what is the C story? Like, what is the C story?
Oh, because that was coming through, like a message about C story, or just you had heard this term before?
No, I read it in an interview with the
Gotcha.
lead singer from Blink-182. He was just like fascinated. I was just like, the C story. I was like, what is that? And it was like a year and a half later. I was like,
gotcha.
It's love.
It's love.
It's love. And I was like,
divine love.
I get it. All
love.
The same.
Yeah.
It's all the same. To separate them is to create more separation. But and there's nothing wrong with that either. They're like, all constructs are fine. Everything's divine.
Yeah.
So, and everything has a purpose and
beautiful
a creation. So that's what comes through me, and they give me a foundation for all the different work that I do now with body work and with bioenergetics and with acting, but also just sharing the vibration. And I know they want me to write a ton of stuff, getting there, like share stuff. But right now I think it's probably about me sharing more, just one wants to come through now.
Yeah.
With whatever questions come through, but a lot about COVID, because the perspective, there's so much energy going into all these other ways.
Yeah.
And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But there's another C story I think that wants to be expressed.
Kind of like the behind the facade of all this. No, it's super cool, first of all. And you've mentioned also quantum technology. I was hoping you could share a little bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. Quantum technology. What a dynamic field. It's kind of the go-to now, it seems, because everything's interconnected. Everything's connected. So like with my technology, I can work with anybody in the world. And a lot of it is based on the constructs of your belief. Like, how do you want to play? What are you going to play with? Because these technologies want to be played with. They're vibration. But you can inherently do it anyway. Like, some people will channel into another person and know exactly what vibrations are going on, and they don't need any technology. But when we believe, and a lot of people trust technology more because of the separation. So they see it on a computer screen, they're like, oh yeah, totally. Here's just some psychic say it. They're like, maybe they want to believe it, or they're like, yes, or they're like, but it's on a computer. It's just like, boom.
So this quantum tech is on a computer.
Yeah, quantum technology is, it works on the computer, but it works on so many different levels, and a lot of which we can't see. It's shifting energy, and it's a whole new realm of medicine and technology. And it's also, I think it's coming through now because it's causing the shift to happen so much faster. So a lot of this technology,
the shift being
into the new earth, as you would say, it's a new story.
A new story, yeah.
And people call it whatever they want,
right.
But it's the story that instead of going through all this cataclysmic, like, wipe out everything, start all over again.
Yeah.
The planet doesn't care. An asteroid hits a planet, they don't care.
Yeah.
They're creating something new. Like, okay, let's
yeah.
keep moving.
keep playing.
Humans are like, understandably.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we're starting over in this construct. But we get to do it together. And all these ideas, think of how many ideas, 8 million different ideas, and as we start to then evolve, not in terms of better or worse, just into new vibration, because it's just about shifting.
Yeah.
Like, they don't talk about healing or things, everything's perfect, just shifting into new experiences and creations.
Yeah.
So when they're going to this kind of creation, they're taking this energy and they're creating something new with it. So, and the quantum is just, it works on such in all of it different ways, and the technology, it works on so many different levels. And understanding how much we affect our reality. Like a lot of what, like again, as we're more at peace inside, our external environment is more at peace. And they always talk about the eyes, like with a lot of the work I do, and they'll say that your eye is a planet. There's a reason it looks like a planet, because you're looking into a world.
Wow.
You're looking through your world into someone else's. And you share this world, but you share this in a separate construct, this creation, these two worlds. And when you keep this eye contact, you start to merge worlds. You start to see one another.
Wow. I'm going to bring this closer because of the rain. Yeah. So you see through, so the eye is like a planet, and the world is our own reality and our own creation, right? That's
your perspective, your lens, and then vice versa. So, and they talk a lot about that, and it's about being present with the world. Probably more than the quantum technology is incredible, and you can research that for months.
Cool, yeah, I've never heard of it, yeah.
But in a lot of this is based on all these new theories and these different types of work, and a lot of it is like, if I can take a photograph and then scan somebody on my technology and they're on the other side of the world, that everything's interconnected in this way is a part of it. It's a big part of it. And then you'll see this too, like it's amazing how fast the oceans are being cleaned up. It's amazing how everything's shifting now to seeds, everything's shifting now to the environment, and how the focus is on there. And it's not to save ourselves as much as it is to now bring a new creation. And the quantum realm is limitless. So as we start to work in that kind of a reality and remember that everything's interconnected, then it's more about what's the next playground,
Can you give just a few examples of how quantum technology, I mean, you mentioned it now, but a bit more specifically how that's being employed now, quantum tech?
Quantum tech, with a lot of things like vibrational science, and again, this is kind of a loose term, and I think it's still...
You talked about
bioenergetics is...
Right, so that would be under the big realm of quantum tech?
It works within the quantum...
Within.
It's one of those things where you can look at it as a biofeedback technology, very simply, but you can also, depending on your belief and understanding and how to play with it, it can work in the quantum realm too. Like, I can just have you here and test you physically and work off of your body and all these things.
Yeah.
But or suddenly the moment that there's this intention and we're starting to work on a written word, or we start to work in different dimensions.
Yeah, okay.
And then we're crossing over. For example, you have a two-dimensional version of you in a photograph.
Yeah.
So when I put that on the technology, that doesn't work with linear time.
Okay.
Okay, 3D does. So that could be your baby picture. And it doesn't matter, and I can scan you because the only moment that really exists is now.
Okay.
So that baby picture is going to tell me everything that's happening to you now, no matter what, because it's tethered to you, your energy. Does that make sense? So
I want to do more research into it, but that's helpful to get a sliver into it.
And also the idea that where you're researching and where you put your energy is where you're going to start creating too. A lot of research, although it wants to be built of one thing on top of the next because it unfolds this extraordinary history and story of humanity.
Yeah. But
at the same time, what we seek is what we find.
Yes.
So, or sometimes we find the exact opposite to inspire even more growth. So that in a lot of it, that's why you research, and that's what they always tell me. You can research any food, like coffee. It's really good for you. It's really bad for you.
Yeah.
It's great. It's terrible.
Right. You find whatever you're looking for. Yeah. Right. To affirm your belief and your biases.
But if everything's divine,
then it doesn't matter.
There's nothing wrong with it. Do you enjoy it?
Right.
And they say it's what?
That's the important part, is the joy part.
And not because you're numbing something, but because you're experiencing something.
Okay.
And that's when we get tricky. We do a lot of things to, like, people will overeat, people will do drugs, people will do, and there's nothing wrong with those things inherently, just everything's kind of neutral. It's just when we do these things to not feel something.
Right, okay.
We're trying to
repress.
And you're designed to feel.
Yes. Yeah.
So the moment you start doing that is the moment it starts then pulling in things to try and get you to feel and how you feel. It's an opportunity. Because we're scared to feel, because when we feel that much, we tap into an old story.
Yeah.
And then we experience this story like the trauma, like the wave. Yeah. And our system is like, the least successful movie in history was Waterworld.
I didn't watch it, but okay.
It's just about a world that's water.
Okay.
And because of this flood.
Oh, okay.
You see, and then one of the most successful is Avatar. There's reasons why there's resonance. What makes a good film a good film?
Yeah.
Feeling, connection, comfort. Star Wars is it's like our history, but it's so accessible because it's not so much at the point. It's not a water world. It's like, it's symbolic for everything that we are. In kind of like a fun soap opera way. So it's enjoyable.
Speaking about water, because you mentioned now, oceans have never been cleaned up so fast, and you also mentioned the other night about icebergs and the memory in them. Can you just touch upon that a little bit?
Oh, they talk about the idea that the water is rising. The oceans are being cleaned faster with new technology, because the technology now, we talked about the separation, it's now starting to merge. And what they say is it's about the technology of the ancient times when we were connected to the planet, and also, other technology coming in together with the world of separation.
Okay.
Because it's not about going backwards and doing something that's already happened, it's about creating something new. So when you bring the ancient technology and the new technology, it's going to inspire newer technology.
Yeah.
So what are we doing? We're ripping through the land. We're starting to make eco-villages. People are starting to intention their agriculture, treatment, working with animals. All this information is coming forwards for creation, to inspire new creation.
Yeah.
That's the only reason they say, you notice, there's, I want to go back to your question, all these superfoods, it keeps changing, what's the big superfood?
Yeah.
Because it's always about expansion and change. You're not going to have one thing that's always going to be a big superfood. Because it's all nutritious. And then when you do your research, it's really nutritious. Then you'll find this other thing. It's there's all this nutrition. So suddenly now we're shifting, having this experience and this experience. And Atkins diet is really good. And then I think at the West Hollywood, all these different diets.
Yeah.
And they're all great. Everything's great. Play with it. But you're talking about with the planet, with the oceans, the water. The water level's rising. What they talk about is that, and I think this is on Gaia too, how when you listen, when you really listen, and not with your ears, but with your soul, with your heart, and that's about, we're designed to receive. We're the receivers, first and foremost. And when we allow ourselves to receive, then we're inspired to create. And a lot of people, maybe there's we say, well, give. And when we're stuck, when you start giving, we start then feeling again. But when we're inherently designed is just to feel. So when we allow ourselves to feel, that's why a lot of people will start giving so that they can feel, or start doing so they can feel. But if we're just feeling, because their construct is feel, play, create, share. Feel, play, create, share. That's the process for creation.
Feel, play, create, share. Okay.
So, and that first part is about allowance. It's about trust. So if we were to listen to the oceans, we listen to the everything here is talking. Everything here is talking, energetically speaking. And there's a resonance with it. Just, are we listening? And of course, if we're traumatized from the planet, we're not going to hear it.
Right.
But as we start to integrate it, get more connected to it, more curious, we start to, and then we start hearing things in the form of ideas. Sometimes, people hear, a few times for me too, I'm working into that myself. That's why Wim Hof's work is so profound, is because he's going right at the trauma.
With his breathing techniques or everything?
And the cold water.
The cold water. Oh, okay.
We're the only thing protecting from cold water on the planet.
We're the only thing? What?
Protecting from the cold water. I mean, some things don't like the cold water, but we actually we control our water. And we have such a thing about cold water and hypothermia, but what does cold do? Reduces inflammation. We can tap into the elements and hydrogen and oxygen, and how this breaks down and how connected it is to this. It's blew my mind.
Yeah.
So with the water's rising, the thing that you're feeling just wants your attention because it has a story, it has something to tell you, and it wants to create something. So Mama Earth, she's got a story to tell. And the thing that wants attention, which most of your body is water.
Yeah.
It's inside and out. So if you're going to discord water, you're also discording your system. And everything that works with it, you know? So,
powerful. So
when you're working in that construct, the understanding that a lot of what's happening with the ice is more information is falling in, more vibration is falling into the water. It's wanting our attention. And as it is, it's coming into the water even more as it's cracking away. It's like adding in, think of, this is probably a real basic way of looking at it. They're just showing me like a bookshelf. And every time these icebergs are falling in, books of knowledge and vibration are just going into the water and spreading out into the vibration. And look where all our attention is going, but we're looking at it as a problem.
The rising sea levels as a problem instead of let's listen.
Right, because it's always learn. That's why people get sick. Like in our office, we never look at a disease as a problem. It's there to remind you to live again.
It's the belief you have about it, right, that will make you sick or not.
The story. Yeah. Yes. I would say yeah. Like everything in our office, the root is disease is emotional discord, relationship, and DNA. They're all interconnected. Like DNA stores the story, relationship, and then the emotion, the belief systems. So once we shift that, it changes. There's nothing feeding the disease anymore. But the reason it's there is to remind us to live again. And sometimes that's a miracle. Other times it'll take people on an adventure, because once you change the vibration, then instead of fighting the disease, you can hear it, and it's going to suddenly bring pieces into your life to say, go here.
Yeah.
And then suddenly you're doing ayahuasca, or you're in Germany with this technology, or you're who knows, or you meet this person on the street. It's like, have you ever thought of doing this? And then it's like, things will just happen. So, and that's the way vibration works.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's why our medical model, again, it's about separation and fear. And that's okay, that's a journey. And because then we get to overcome our fear, and then we get the hero's journey, and then we get to save the feminine. You know, saving the heroine is like trying to save the planet, finding our worth again. And she just wants to be played with, you know?
That's a beautiful way to kind of wrap up, maybe, is around this concept of divine feminine and divine masculine. And if you could just touch upon that, either how you or when you're channeling, what are the messages that come up around these energies and the time we're in now?
That they're the same. It's one energy.
Okay.
That again, we're given the physiological map of this body that we have. There's so many maps we get to play with. Like one night I was looking at the sky and I said, what is that? They said, that's you. And I was like, wait. They said the star system, the billions of stars, that's what's in you. So that's why there's a connection and resonance with ancient civilizations and technologies to know how far the planets are from one another and their constructs and the way they operated. They were just connected because it's all one thing. But we get to play in it. So with the masculine and feminine, it's the idea that, so let's go back to all kinds of the Egyptians, it goes on and on. So we're receiving through the left. And then we allow ourselves, this is just to feel, because when we break it down, we can play with it, and we can look at it when we separate it. Because if it's one, then we can't, you know, it's hard to see yourself.
Yeah.
So then when we're suddenly in a million pieces, it's like, oh wow, look at all the incredible things that I am.
Okay.
And so when you're looking at
the separation is kind of there in order to be able to play and to see and to learn. Would you say that?
I don't think learning is really a part of it. I think it's to experience the full potential and expansion of what it is to be. You know, and in this construct, human. Yeah. And beyond. Like, what does human even mean based on, a lot of people limit what humans are, and we're creeping into the exponential potential of what that is. But like, classic story, the 4-minute mile, they thought it would never happened, and then suddenly it got broken like by 23 people soon after that.
Right, yeah.
It's just belief, you know? People can float, people can fly. I've seen people, you know, off the ground. You're like, what can we do? Yeah. Really? But masculine, the feminine is you receive here, and then the heart just feels and then knows exactly what to do without question. And it doesn't matter if there's 1,000 people in front of you saying, you're not going by here. If the heart knows, because it sees far beyond any fear. And that's when that's not interrupted. We're allowed to feel that and then act unapologetically, fully, and with total trust from that space, full creation. And then we see the impossible possible. So they're one energy. And beauty is we get to play with it, especially in this current construct with each other, in so many different beautiful ways. You know? So.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That was beautiful. So much insight and wisdom shared.